So another tool that I used over and over and over again during those months, during the process, rather than the event, during the process, was a quote by Albert Einstein, a different quote by Albert Einstein. And that quote is, "The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the level of thinking that created them." Think about it. The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the level of thinking that created those problems. So what does that mean? Something that Mary says all the time is the problem is never the problem. The problem is never the problem. The problem is always and only what I'm thinking that makes it seem like a problem. So the person is not the problem, the job is not the problem, traffic is not the problem, the weather is not the problem. It's what I'm thinking about those things that make them feel like a problem to me. So I can always ask the question, what is it that I'm thinking about you that's making me feel this way toward a person or a, some circumstance that feels like a problem? What is it that I'm thinking about you that's making me feel like this is a problem? The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the level of thinking that created them. So if I'm at the problem level of thinking, what am I going to experience? I'm going to experience problem, and it's going to snowball, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, because that's how it works. Because you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. And if I'm looking at something and I'm seeing a problem, that's what I'm thinking about it. So what if I raise my level of thinking to the solution level? The second you do that, solutions start appearing from nowhere. And I have example after example after example of times that I have done this, caught myself living at the problem level with regard to something, and deliberately called to mind that quote and shifted my level of thinking to the solution level, and immediately solutions start to show up, even if it's just a different thought process in my mind. So like, I don't know what to do. Well, what would I do if I knew what to do? What would I do if I did know what to do? If I knew what to do, what would be my next best step? Those are amazing questions to ask when you're in the middle of something that you would like to be different, and you would like to feel empowered in the middle of that something, whatever it is. Ask yourself those kinds of questions. What would I do if I knew what to do? What would this be like? What would I be experiencing if I didn't feel like this, if I wasn't looking at this and only seeing a problem? So there's a Bible story that really, and I learned a lot of this. A lot of this is my own, but a lot of it came from Mary. And when it's something that I learned from Mary, I'm going to acknowledge that I learned it from Mary, because I learned a lot from her. She's been my teacher for a long time. So she talks about David and Goliath. And anyone who's read either Successfully Midair or Pop Your Paradigm knows that I've written extensively on this subject because I find it fascinating. It fascinates me. So there was a war between the Israelites and the Philistines, and the way they fought the war back then was one side would line up on one side of a valley, and the other side would line up on the other side of the valley, and on the appointed day, on the day that they have the appointment to start the war, they line up on either side of this valley, and when the sun comes up, they rush in and kill each other. So, and that's how it works. And something that Mary says that makes me laugh every time is, so when it's your day to be at the front of the line, it's not your day. It's not your day. It's pretty much a given that you're going to croak on that day. Um, so anyway, they're preparing. They've set the appointment, and now they're preparing for this war. And Jesse had, I think he had 8 sons, and 3 of them were soldiers in this war. And the start date was approaching, and so Jesse called his youngest son David, who he called him in from keeping the sheep. He was a shepherd. We all know that. Excuse me. And he said, "Here, take your brothers, take this food, go find your brothers in the encampment and give them this food." So David did so. He went to the encampment, and there's, 100,000 soldiers or whatever, a large number. So it's no easy task to find his brothers. But when he gets there, he discovers that something different has been going on. And for 40 days, and the meaning of 40 days in the Bible doesn't really mean 40 days. It means all the time it takes for transformation. That's what 40 in the Bible means. So for 40 days, something's been going on that's caused a commotion. At dawn and at dusk, every day for 40 days. Okay, so here's the thing. Israelites are not physically big people. Philistines are. They were much, much bigger. They were much bigger than the Israelites. And one man in particular was much bigger than all the Philistines. He was a Philistine, and he was much bigger than everybody else. He was a giant. And he was also a really good speaker. And he would go out into the middle of the valley, and he would say, "Let's do this differently. Let's do this war differently. It doesn't have to be done like this. It doesn't have to be done like this. One of you come and fight me to the death, and the losers' people will become the slaves of the winners' people. And all these people don't have to die." It wasn't the point he was making. "One of you come and fight me. Let's do this differently." And he was such a powerful speaker, and I guess he had an energy that was attractive, because the Israelite soldiers would crowd around him when he was talking. They would crowd around him, they would listen intently, and when he would say, "One of you come and fight me to the death," they would all get freaked out, and they would run and hide in the caves. And that happened every time. So when David got there, he found out that this was going on, and he crowded in too. And when everybody else got freaked out and ran, he got freaked out and ran with them. And it was an interesting experience, to say the least. So he's searching the encampment for his brothers, and he's hearing what's been going on. This has been going on for 40 days, and King Saul has made a proposal. He's made an offer to his soldiers, and the offer is, to the man who will fight Goliath, should he win, he will have great riches, in the form of gold and land and horses. He will have great riches. His family will never be asked to pay taxes again, and he will have my daughter, the princess's hand in marriage. To the man who fights Goliath, should he win, he will have these things. Well, David was interested in that offer. He's like, he would go talk to people about it. Is it true? Did the king really say that? Is it, so he's focused on what he wants and what he would like to have and what's attractive to him and what he's interested in. He got really interested in the offer. more so than in Goliath after a certain amount of time. During this time, he found his brothers and he said to them, "What do you think about what the king said?" And his brothers said, and we've all heard this, "Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? You're just a kid. You could never, have you seen that guy? He's a giant. You don't have a chance. Don't even try it." How many of us have had people in our lives, well-meaning people? The brothers were not, I don't believe, I mean, I've read the story in the Bible and it doesn't really go into all this much detail, but it's not like they're putting him down. They don't want him to die at Goliath's hands. And so they care about him. So they don't want him to don't get outside your comfort zone. Don't do something that might be too much for you. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're bigger than you really are? So David said, because the brothers are like, "Have you seen him? Have you seen him? He's a giant. Goliath is a giant. He's way bigger than you. You could never beat him." And David said, "I don't want to talk about Goliath. I don't want to talk about Goliath. I want to talk about the princess." Remember what I said a few minutes ago? You get what you think about, whether you want it or not. I don't want to talk about Goliath. I don't want to talk about the problem. I want to talk about the princess. So he left his brothers and he went and he wandered the encampment and he talked to people. Have you heard what the king promised? And the princess is pretty. Do you think she takes a bath every day? And what, he's like, what would it be like to be in bed with her? And he's interested. He's interested in the prize instead of the problem. So finally, he goes to King Saul and he says, "I'll do it." And the king says, "Here, take my armor." And so he puts his armor on David. And David says, "This doesn't fit me. This doesn't fit me. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it the way that I feel called to do it." Because he was he was a man of faith. He was a man of faith in God. So he understood divine guidance. And so he said, "This doesn't fit me." So he removed the king's armor and he got the 5 smooth stones. And, we all know what happened. Well, we all think that he actually killed Goliath with the stone. And he didn't. He only knocked him down. He knocked him down, and then he took the sword and he chopped off Goliath's head. And that, with regard to problem, the chopping off of the head signifies the removal of the problem. And the sword that he used is called the sword of truth. And there are a couple of things about this that I really want to touch on because it's so important and most people don't think about it. The princess would not have been possible if Goliath hadn't been there. The prize wouldn't have been possible if the problem hadn't showed up. That is so huge. One of the ways I look at this is the solution is inherent in the problem. If you're having a problem, there's a solution that is a part of that. You can't have a problem without at least one solution. And in this case, you can't have the princess without the problem. You can't have the princess without the giant in the way. So another point that I want to make is the princess and the riches and the never paying taxes again, the prize was available to every single Israelite. All 100,000 of them had the opportunity. And David is the one that became more interested in the opportunity than he was in the obstacle. That is such a powerful thing to apply in your life. If you can be more interested, put your attention on the opportunity rather than on the obstacle shrinks. It gets smaller, you know. But if you go into it thinking, oh, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, the problem is never the problem. The problem is always what I'm thinking about what I'm looking at that makes it seem like a problem. So he wasn't looking at Goliath like a problem. He was looking at Goliath as the way to get to the princess. I have something written down that I've been carrying with me. This is the backpack that came from Portland 16 years ago. I'm still using it. I love my backpack. This comes from Successfully Midair. I'm quoting myself. It says, the key to actually receiving the big reward that is inherent in an intense challenge is found in the willingness to meet the challenge and allow it to move you to the reward. There's a lot to be said for not giving up. And this can be applied to problem, because there's always a solution inherent in the problem. So the name of that story isn't really David and Goliath. It's not. It's David and the princess. Because if he hadn't gotten more interested in the princess than he was in the problem, the princess would not have been possible for him. It wasn't until, and that's why the princess was not possible for the rest of, because they didn't choose to make her possible for themselves, because they were so focused on the giant problem. They were so focused on the obstacle. The obstacles need to be honored for what they are, because every single one of them that we ever experience is just this kind of thing. What Goliath was to David. Goliath was an obstacle, but he was a divine obstacle. And without that obstacle, I always make it a capital. When I write it down, it's with a capital O, because it's significant. I appreciate my obstacles, especially when I finally get past them. You know, I'm not perfect at this. I just know how to practice it, and I know how to apply it. And this is important. The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the level of thinking that created them. If I'm only focused on Goliath, I can't see anything but Goliath. So that's my level of thinking. So if I can move my level of thinking to the other side of Goliath and deliberately focus on the princess, then there's so much more available to me when I can do that, because Goliath shrinks when you're focusing on what's on the other side of him. I thank you, Goliath. Thank you, problem. Thank you, obstacle, for appearing before me, because you're going to catapult me to the reward, to the prize. And this is it's another metaphor. I lied. I wasn't thinking about really how many metaphors I use in my life when I said that in that other video, that there are only two. There are more. Sorry. But I like them. They work for me. So when you feel like something in your life is a problem, whether it's your spouse or your boss or your homework or, you know, whatever, your car won't start, there's always, you can't have a problem without a solution inherent in it. And you can't have a really big problem without a really big prize on the other side of it. That's just how it works. It's all because it's all enmeshed, you know. So you have a problem at this level of this end of the stick. It's all like one stick. There's problem down here and solution over here. And the size of the problem, when you have something that feels like a really big problem, on the other side is a solution that is proportionate. It's equal amount. I heard Bob Proctor talking about this once. He was having a $2 million problem. And he was having a $2 million problem. And he was standing in the middle of a room. And he said, right here is a $2 million problem. So I'm going to step over here on the other side of this invisible line is my $2 million solution. And that's how he looks at things. That's how he looks at things. And this is why he makes so much money and why he's so successful in all areas of his life, because this is his normal way of looking at things. There's always another way to look at something. So something that feels like a problem, start asking the questions. What would I do if I knew what to do? If that's appropriate, if that's an appropriate question in whatever you're in the midst of. I was looking for a job once and I was out of options. I don't know what to do. Well, what would I do if I knew what to do? And something came to me immediately, and it worked, and I got a very good job out of the deal. So that's just one example. So I don't know what to do. What would I do if I knew what to do? Is one thing. What is it that I'm thinking about you that's making me feel this way? Is another one. What is it that I'm thinking about you that's making you seem like a problem to me? Whether that's directed at a person or a circumstance. What is it that I'm thinking that's making me feel like this is a problem? Because the problem is never the problem. The problem is always and only what I'm thinking about whatever I'm looking at that's making it seem like a problem. So, and then there's the obstacle. There's that whole Goliath thing. There's always an opportunity that goes right along with the obstacle. Always. So I hope you find this useful. Leave me comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. And it's my hope that you apply this stuff. You know, the next time something shows up in your life that feels like a problem to you, try applying this. And you will, especially if you do it diligently and expecting it to work, you will get good results. And you will get different results from what you normally get. I can tell you that, because we all know that if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten. So maybe it's time to start doing things differently. And for me, I'm going to go eat dinner now. So thank you for listening, and thank you for joining me. And please leave me comments. Let me know what you think, and enjoy the rest of your day.